Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hey.
This is our Brown Bag podcast from Chabot College Equity Group. And this is Sandra Genera coming live from California. And today we have Carmen Johnston and Brian Augsburger, the Chabot colleagues. Carmen, can you share with us what's giving you life these days?
I would say the thing that's giving me life is exercise, even though I'm not getting enough of it at all. But like when I remember to do some yoga or to go for a walk, or I have this like dance video that I like to do off of YouTube. This woman that her name is Fit Body by Ashley, and she just dances the way I like to the music I like. And so I just, do her little dances, and it's really nice because she'll have like a 5-minute video, a 10-minute, 20. So no matter how much time I got, I can like get my little shimmies out for the day. And so exercising has been really, really helpful, especially with how stressful it is this time of the year. It's been great.
Thank you. Brian, what's giving you life these days?
I'll have to say that seeing our kids, I've got five-year-old twins, and they just started kindergarten a few weeks ago, and just seeing them like light up and be excited when we pick them up from school at the end of the day, and kind of and it, at least it feels like they're thriving in the new school. We were really concerned about sending them to a new school, and they were really anxious about it going into it. So just seeing that they're really enjoying themselves, and they're slowly making new friends. It's a little hard for them. They're not used to being in 2 separate classrooms. That's really tough for my twins. But exciting to like pick them up at the end of the day and just see the excitement on their faces, and see that they're learning things. And we did homework for the first time, so that it was a little challenging, but still just to see that they're enjoying themselves. It's really that's definitely giving me life right now. We were really anxious over the summer.
So exciting. Opposite end of the education spectrum. And so one thing that's giving me life right now is I drove my son out to Oregon. He's a student at University of Oregon, and so on Tuesday we drove up to Oregon, and it was a really nice drive. So just looking forward to that drive. There was that feeling of anxiety and just uncertainty. This is his second year up there, but knowing that my house is going to be quiet again. And so I'm all getting emotional right now.
I know.
But just knowing that he's in a good space. So knowing that he's in a good space gives me the ease to also be in a good space, right? So that's giving me life. Yeah.
It's so funny when you were just saying that you were going to cry. Just thinking about, him being off at college and being at home, having that empty nest. And I think it was last week I was driving my daughter to school, and she's just in 9th grade, and she's like, I want to go to school in New York. And I was like, oh, New York, oh my God, it's so far away, and it's like 4 years. I'm like, I am not trying to think about that at all, but I can already feel like, oh my God, like that's gonna happen, and I just have one, so it's gonna be super duper empty around here without her.
Yeah.
Well, thinking about preparing students, right? Preparing your son to go to college, and I do think that's like one thing that we do well at Chabot is prepare our students for the next phase in our life, in their lives. And that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today. That's a piece of what we wanted to talk about today with Brian, who has been at Chabot for some time now and has worn a few different hats, particularly thinking about Black students. And like you were like the Black Excellence Collective, right? You led that. You led the 10 by 10. And now you are working in special programs, right? So you tell us your titles and history here, because I feel like you're like the man of all trades.
Sure. Well, my role has, like, I guess, shifted a little bit, or a little bit since I've been here, back and forth. But one thing that kind of remains true since I came to Chabot is that, like, the focus of the things that I'm working on has always been in support of the Black student population experience here on our campus. I think when I first started as an adjunct, I was working with Dr. Wilson and Art, and then the coordinator of My Sister's Keeper, to try to kind of pull together all the programs that were supporting Black students, and to start to think of them kind of as a larger community, right, of support. And then started working as EOPS counselor, and that kind of has always been my role as an EOPS counselor. But as for folks here at Chabot, we wear many hats, and we have all the things that we're passionate about, alongside our, like, quote unquote, our role. So I've always really loved working as an EOPS counselor and working with the students in EOPS, but I've always been really passionate about making sure that we're doing our best to create a welcoming and supportive environment for Black students on our campus. And that kind of work has evolved over the years, and doing different projects. And spent the year and a half, about a year, working with the 10 by 10. Something we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. And as the Black Cultural Resource Center was coming back into being, as a space for students to be on campus, I kind of helped to kind of reinvigorate that space. And now someone else is coordinating that space and doing a wonderful job. So now I'm kind of trying to think about how I can to do the work in support of Black students, just from a different seat or position on campus.
Well, we're hoping that this will be the first episode in a series of episodes looking at Black students at Chabot, particularly trying to go back to 2020 with the murder of George Floyd and all the work that we wanted to do for Black students at Chabot, and just to see, like, where are we at now? So what do you want to take us back to March 2020 for you? And just, George Floyd had just got murdered. Our college.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Breonna Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a lot of anxiety out in the community, in trying to get a handle on all of the emotions that were going on. And that just doesn't stay out in the community. It comes on campus. It comes into our classrooms. It comes into our offices. As a counselor, Brian, as a teacher, Carmen, like, it's not something that just stays out in the community. And so it really felt like Chabot was taking a stance to say, we're in this together, right? And how, again, take us back to that March 2020 and the work that we started and the impact that Chabot started addressing, with the students feeling they needed to be heard and feeling that they needed a space on campus where they felt safe.
Yeah, and that's I think this is, like, one of a few times, and I appreciate you all, like, kind of prompting me to think about that time, right? And going back to that time, I think we kind of have moved, not, we're kind of the work that we're doing, kind of sometimes we kind of forget about, some of the things that were kind of the
catalyst.
Yeah,
right?
the catalyst, right? And sometimes we try to forget about some of the really challenging times or the hard times, but that that was obviously a really challenging time for everyone, and I think that we on our campus we saw that our students were and our community, our whole our staff and our Chabot community, but our students were really were hurting, like, and and felt like the community that we live in, the country that we live in, wasn't supporting us in the way that we needed to be supported, right? And didn't feel safe, right? And our students didn't feel safe, being out there in the world, seeing people that looked like them, and seeing that their lives, felt like their lives didn't matter, right? And they could lose their lives at any moment. So, I remember, speaking with a number of students, it just felt like they weren't safe, right? Just being out in the world, right? And also at the time, I was, part of a Black men's group that, one of our colleagues here started, and that was one of the things that we talked about, right? Is that we, about not really feeling safe in the world or in the community, and that really drove a lot of, like, kind of a thought process and work that I chose to engage in, I think, in the coming years. This is, the stuff that I have been doing to support students on our campus and Black student community has always been something that's been part of, been my passion and been part of, what I enjoy doing here on our campus. But there was a different meaning behind it, I think. After the murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, it's like, we need to not only create a welcoming and supported environment for our students, but we also need to, help create a space where they can process the things that are going on in the world, right? And then also, and create a space where they feel safe when they're with us, when they're in our care, right? Because the students, when they're here, we are caring for them, even though they're adults, they're grown-ups, right? But they are in our care. So I think that really is kind of, made me reflect on, why I do what I do here on our campus, and why I'm so passionate about, supporting our students, because, I experience not all the same things that our students experience, but, we all have, as Black folks, we have our own different experiences and different communities that we're in, but we have something that ties our experiences together, right? As African American or Black Americans, or
and as humans too, because the
yeah,
pandemic
yeah,
on at the
yeah,
same time.
and that's a whole nother level, right? That's a whole nother level, that a layer of anxiety and stress, and just fear that was kind of placed on top of this, during that time. So that was a really challenging time,
So Brian, like, in that fall semester, when we were getting back on campus, or we were trying to get back into a routine that was not a routine, right? We had to figure out what our routine was going to be. What were some of the, because I remember there was some of the voices that we felt our students had voices that felt like our administrators needed to hear, so that it wouldn't just be, let's go on as with business as usual. What were some of the things that did happen on campus, into starting what the 10 by 10 project was, that was the catalyst for this?
Well, I mean, a few things that I think are the most important to point out is that, the Black student leaders on our campus were the ones that really kind of led the charge, right? And pushed for, our administrators and also our campus community to make some change, right? And to change the way that we think about supporting and our students. There was a group of our Black student leaders, and along with some our classified staff and faculty, that created a couple open letters, right? They sent to campus and district administrators, right? That kind of outlined a number of kind of points that they felt were important in terms of supporting, not just supporting Black students, but kind of changing the way that Black students were. I keep going back to the word supported, but I'm just with kind of within the community. And
I think it was addressed the way our students were addressed on campus.
Yeah.
Right. And so what can you, like, in a nutshell, give us an idea of what was the 10 by 10 project?
Sure. So like during that summer, Dr. Wilson and Dr. Cooks kind of, I think along with consultation with a few other faculty and some of the students, kind of took those letters that were presented to the campus administrators and kind of pulled out the main concepts that were presented, and used the idea of the I guess the concept of like a 10 groups or villages on campus that can focus on 10 of these points that were in the written letters, right? And so that what the 10 by 10 was meant to do was to engage at least 100 staff and faculty and administrators on campus, including students, and kind of place place them in each of these kind of 10 areas, like kind of focus areas to address some of the issues that were important to students and especially to Black students and our Black staff on campus. So each of these 10 groups, we engaged the 100 plus folks on our campus, kind of in exploration into what the campus has been doing, and kind of how we can change how we support the Black students and staff in our community. And it was a lot more than just that. But that was kind of how it kind of began, was just kind of a call out to folks on campus to see just to engage them in this work to really tackle some of the issues that were affecting the Black student experience on campus, and not just the students, but our staff and faculty, and kind of our hiring practices, and some of the like institutional practices that in some ways were harmful to Black students. And
yeah, it was a pretty massive undertaking, trying to get 100 people together in these little villages, and people were meeting, monthly and bi-monthly. They went through training. It was pretty intense. It was an intense kind of, I don't know, just bringing together of all these different folks that seemed really earnest about trying to do something, for Black students. And I mean, I was just thinking about like in 2020 when George Floyd got killed, and all the protesting and everything. And, me and my daughter went to a couple of protests. But one of the things that I was really shocked by, and it's weird to say, is just that people cared. I just didn't really think that people would care, because I mean, it wasn't the first murder by the police. It had been going on, for quite some time. And I don't know what it was about this murder in particular that really got to people. I mean, it had gone on before the college even sent out their letter. I mean, there was Trayvon Martin. I mean, there was just so many instances of Black men being murdered by the police, and there was just something really significant about this murder that really catapulted people into organizing and trying to do something. And I just remember all the book lists going around, all the people trying to read what is the book, the White Fragility, and 100 Ways to Be Anti-Racist. Like, people were just so into it. And I feel like that energy was like really what fueled the 10 by 10, right? That really got people engaged and really trying to think about this issue. And maybe folks were just kind of tired of it too, of just seeing this,
And I'd say that's one thing that I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into, right? Like, kind of at the beginning of this 10 by 10, I think that nobody really knew, right? It was like we had this idea, we're going to pull folks together and kind of engage in conversation, but also like do some work and try to like create some like actions out of the conversations that we're having. But one thing that I really appreciated was just seeing how many people like genuinely wanted to see some change happen. And I think that kind of in the work that we do kind of on our campus, sometimes we engage with small groups of folks, and we work with the same groups of people over and over and over again, because we know we work well, or we have similar interests, right? Or in the sense, it was nice to see that there are this many people, right, that over the summer, right, answer the call, right, to participate in this project or work, not knowing really what they were getting themselves into, and even seeing just like how many people genuinely engaged in the process and all the work that CCEPG was doing to like, provide the workshops and the training and like that felt really good to see, people being willing to like push some boundaries and step outside of their comfort zone a little bit and have difficult conversations. I'm sure it was difficult for a lot of people to have some of the conversations that we had, but it was heartening to see that people were willing to do that. It could have been maybe a perfect storm of like all the things that were happening in the world, and people felt maybe, like you said, maybe just kind of tired, right? But also I feel like our community kind of, on our campus, there's something to be said about the community that we have on our campus, right? That allows for that space. So yeah, it was. I feel like it was a challenging time, but I think we learned a lot. I think about our campus community and what there's potential to do.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, like, I definitely think that we had all been like priming the pump at Chabot in a lot of different ways through all the different programs, whether it's Puente and the different speakers that come, or Emoja or Sin or the CCEPG work, the work that Justina was doing with the Roots to Rise, the JAC, the Ethnic Studies Summit, the new mural. I mean, I think there's just been such a great buildup of social justice energy that definitely, help create that space that you're talking about, for sure, for there to be this movement and discussion.
And I know we had started looking at some of the data. Carmen, do you have any data that we can look at, or we can talk, like, the numbers and how it has affected our numbers on campus and what actually happened? And I know there was goals set forward in putting our 10 by 10 villages together and our Black Excellence Collective, and then what actually did happen in looking at the numbers and the data.
Right. So I'm looking at so Cynthia, who was going to be with us, who couldn't join us today, she sent over, some slides and some information, and data is very meaty and so very, challenging to kind of pull apart. But I'm just looking at the overall course success rates for Black students, and this is the fall of 2020. And it basically has that, like, at Chabot, all the other students are at a 72% success rate and Black students are at 60%, right? So, and this is 2 years ago. Higher withdrawal rate, 26% versus 19%. Non-success, 13 versus 9% for all other students. And one of the things that I have been, that I was really impacted by was last year, and I've been like talking to everyone about this and bringing this up everywhere that I am, is that last year PAR did like a report where they compiled all the different program reviews, and Cynthia shared it with me and Kristen just because of the CCEPG work. And I was just so astounded to see that every department on campus mentioned Black students as the students that they were struggling to serve. Often they would include Latino students and Pacific Islander students, but every department had Black students as the students that they weren't succeeding, that they weren't reaching. And so I don't know, I have a lot of feelings about that. And yeah, I just like wonder, I mean, what do you think about that, Brian?
I think the first thing that I would say about that fall 2020 data, and I'd be interested to see, how that compares to previous semesters, right? And even, semesters since, since we've been back a little bit more on campus, that semester and even the spring 21 semester were really challenging for all of our students, right? But especially, challenging for Black students, Black and Latino students, and any of our other students who, our first generation students who, they're dealing with regular life challenges and then kind of a pandemic on top of that, right? And so that's just definitely something that comes to mind about those 2 semesters, right? That like a lot of our students were really having challenging times, right? And struggling to get through the semester. And we were doing, as counselors, right, and as instructional faculty as well, like doing our best to support the students and help keep them supported and keep them in the classes as much as we where when it's appropriate to keep them in. But there were some students that just needed a break and needed to drop those classes. Thankfully there were options for them to do that without too much stress. But even the having to drop classes and not passing classes, but that does create some level of stress for students, even when there's a system that allows them to do it without it affecting their future grades and whatnot. But in terms of just kind of our departments across campus, indicating that kind of they all struggle with supporting Black students. I also have kind of a lot of thoughts about that, and it's, I think, maybe hard to kind of pin down. I would just say that there's definitely, it tells me that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, right? And
Yeah.
one, it's good that it's being talked about, right? Like so the departments or the faculty or who they're willing to say, okay, these are the students that are either struggling in our classes or we're struggling to support them. Just talk, okay, putting it out there, that's one step, right? Just to let but then also, but that tells us that there's a lot of work that we need to do to make sure that all of our faculty feel comfortable with supporting Black students, are able to identify when students are having challenges, or I know that in some of the work that CCEPG was doing with like the math and science, or was it just science? Was math and science?
STEM, yeah.
With STEM, right? And I was speaking with Dean Forbes about that project, and it sounded like it was a really really interesting and kind of project, because the faculty learned a lot about their teaching styles and how to engage with students, and how to better support students in their classes. And I think that's something that like there isn't like a magic wand that you can wave, and then all of a sudden we're able to support all of our different groups of students in the ways they need to be. It's like there's continuous improvement that needs to happen, right? Yeah, there's a lot that I a lot of thoughts that I have about that, and a lot of things, but I just, what I hope is that we learn from that is that there's a lot of room for improvement, and then I hope that folks are willing to do that, right? It's to make that improvement and to continue to learn, right? To continue to can speak specifically for for counseling and student services too. Like we need to continue to learn, because what our students need now this semester, right, in the fall of what year are we in? 2022, right? What our students need now is very different than what they needed 2 years ago in fall 2020, right?
Exactly.
And if we try to do that or give them that, it's not going to meet their needs, right? So we have to be able to we have to be able to evolve, improve on what continue the things that are working, and improve on the things that aren't quite meeting the needs of our students, and just be willing to do that, and like take all ego out of it, right? So that I just hope that that's something that folks are willing to do.
I think that's the willing is the hard part, right? It's like, how do we get, because I mean, since I've been at Chabot for 16 years and that data has not changed. It's always been that Black students, right? It's never been like, oh my God, they're the best. It's always been that like they're at the bottom. There are some things that Black students are actually really good at, and one is finishing college. Like, even though they're maybe not like passing at the same rates, like there was some data that showed that they had a very high transfer rate or something like that. I may be mistaken, but I remember seeing that, like, oh, that's interesting, that like, but I wonder about that will, and how do we get people, to see this data. If you see Pacific Islander students, see Latino students, it's like how do we problematize it? How do we make it so like, oh, we got to get our stuff together. We got to, you know, how do we get that energy? And I feel like it's hard, you know, it's really, really hard.
And do you see, like, so there was definitely a push and a willingness in 2020, in the fall of 2020, and that year 2020, 21, to get the Black villages, or the 10 by 10 villages going, and the commitment of the faculty and staff and administrators to have those conversations and to make space and make time with each other and with the students. How has that continued or not in the past 2 years? And where do you see the need for that to then continue?
Well, I just say that like we just need to like not let up, right, on the pressure, on the, like, I'm thinking about like having our foot on the gas, right? Like we also have to be realistic, right? We all dealt with this pandemic the last couple of years, and it's been challenging for everyone, right? For us, you know, as a community, it's just hard to just kind of continue to do what we're doing. But we have to, continuously like apply the pressure to let folks know that the, most like marginalized groups of students on our campus always need our support, right? And we can't let up on that.
So how and who does that?
Yeah.
Because you have your position on campus, you're hired as an EOPS counselor, now coordinator, and you've transitioned from the BCRC Black Cultural Resource Center coordinator. You have different roles on campus. And so whose role is it then to share with the community, with the campus, to say, hey, or with administrators, hey, it's not done yet. Just because we did this project for 2 years, it doesn't mean that it's done and that it's over. Like, who should be the ones that should be applying the pressure? Who should be the ones that should be putting out reminders like, hey, have you tried this with your class this year? Or can you share what has worked with you? And because it can't always just be the same people, right? So how do we keep this momentum going, knowing that I have 10 students to see today, that I have 3 classes to teach today, that I have papers to grade, that I have my children to listen to when I get home and tend to, and so how do we do this humanly, but also do it justice so that we don't burn ourselves out? Like, I would hate to see you burn yourself out, because you are such an asset to our community, to our campus. And so I think that's why I'm part of Equity, is that I know that there's so much that needs to get done, and I know I can't do it by myself. And so I know I need to lean on people so that we can get the word out. Like, I guess I'm interested to know, in the update cycle, what's going to come out of the 10 by 10 PAR program review, and who's going to write that? Like, is it like, does it come back to you, or does it come back to Carmen? Does it come back, like, who's going to be writing that? Because it shouldn't just be one person putting that together, because it was a community effort that this happened.
Yeah. We touched on a lot of things, a couple things that you probably can see on my face, and I'm just like, oh, that are really, a couple of things that are really hard for me. But I'll say that, like, what I'd love to see happen, right, is we've got a really great Black Education Association, right? Our classified staff and faculty and administrators, right? And there's power in that group, right? And great minds in that group, and passion in that group. I'd love to see the BEA continue to push the college, right, to do this work, and I think that's kind of the kind of path that it's on. We've been having conversations about how the BEA can kind of continue some of the conversations, continue to provide some of the activity for students or events for students, but then also that, like, the BCRC space, right, the Black Cultural Resource Center space, and hopefully, when it's like fully staffed, right, then hopefully can also lead that charge to create more like student-facing support and activities on campus. I mean, you touched on one thing that's like been really hard for me in this new position, right, as a coordinating EOPS and care and guardian scholars, is that like my capacity, I haven't been able to do as much as I have been in the past couple of years, supporting this work. And so I'm trying, like I think I said it kind of at the beginning of this conversation, like trying to rethink or think differently about how I can still, or how I can continue to be involved in supporting Black students in our community, but just in a different way. And like you said, it can't fall on one group of people or one person or and that's one thing that like we kind of had for a long time had a really a good core group of folks that were really kind of pushing these support programs. So I'm hoping that like maybe the new fresh energy and new staff on campus, hopefully that like join in, and be part of the BEA, and the BEA can kind of carry the torch or find, smaller committees or groups that can kind of continue to, push the work forward. I don't know if I have like a perfect answer for that, for like, who does it, right? Like it's not, it definitely shouldn't be, just one group of people or one person, right? It should be part of, it should be part of what the college does, right? Is that we support our students who need it the most. And I think that we do, right? But there's definitely more of it. We need to be doing more, right?
Yeah.
And that sounds almost like the recommendation we always end our podcast with, doing recommendations, for the future. And as we're in this middle of the cycle of program review, and it sounds like a recommendation that you had was that it should not fall on one person, right? It should be a collective.
And can I say real quick, because I also wanted to be very clear, even though, I've really put a lot of my, personal energy and work into this, right? It's never been, just me doing any of the work, right? I've, always felt very supported by and as a collective of folks. So yeah, I want to be like, make sure that's very clear, right? Because it's always been a really, wonderful group of folks that are thinking about, how we can, create student-facing programming for, and support program for Black students. And I'm just trying to rethink how I engage with that work and with those groups of folks.
Thank you. And I always like to remind my deans that the only way I get to do the work that I do is because I do feel the support from my dean and my administrators, right? And at the end of the day, I'm doing the work that I'm passionate about, and I'm working towards making sure that I'm building a community for our students on campus. Carmen, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I feel like my thoughts are like a million places right now, I'm thinking about our Black students, thinking about like how I as Black faculty engaged in the Black community at Chabot College, and kind of where I am at with that, what I want to do, thinking about burnout, and just how I feel like that's in this Zoom space with like two very, very hardworking people that give a lot to Chabot. And so I know you all can relate to that feeling of burnout, and like just trying to figure out, how do you get more people on board to take up these charges and take up this work? And I also am trying to figure out how to like, and I don't know how this will sound, but I'm also trying to like figure out how to make peace if the work doesn't get picked up. I don't know if I want to be the person like killing myself to like make something happen that is killing me, just energy wise and stuff,
Right.
and so just like, when do you let go? And, just all those things I'm thinking about. But I will say, as far as like a recommendation, because I know we're going off and got time, I'm going to like revert back to my TV recommendations, because it was my birthday a couple weeks ago. And to kick off the birthday weekend was the new season of Cobra Kai. So I definitely recommend checking out Cobra Kai on Netflix, which is a very, very fun show, and you just have to roll with it, okay? And just suspend disbelief and just, let it be corny, goofy, and ridiculous, but it is so, so fun. And they have a young Latino boy that's playing like the Ralph Macchio type character, and he's just such a darling. And so I just totally love that show, and me and my daughter love him, and I recommend Cobra Kai.
And I know I kind of went ahead and pushed that recommendation that you had, Brian, but go ahead, like do a fun recommendation for us.
Eat fresh vegetables and fruit. I spend, anybody who knows me knows that I spend, every moment that I have free in the garden, in my garden, and my kids, my son asked me the other day, Daddy, why are you always in the garden? I love to see, people, especially Black and brown folks, but I love to see people growing their own vegetables if they can, if they have the space to do it, right? Or fruit. And love to share the bit of knowledge that I have on doing that. So yeah, eat fresh vegetables and fruit, stay healthy.
What a fun thing to learn about you. That's so cool.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. I bring, when I have fruit, I bring fruit, and I brought some tomatoes to our staff here the other day. When I have an abundance, or even just when I have stuff that I want to share, I bring it here to the staff. And I'm happy now that we're back on campus because I can bring my lemons that were falling on the ground, because I would always bring like bags and bags of lemons and give them to the students.
Well, my recommendations is take in friendly sports bantering. My house is a house divided, 49er and Raiders. Giants and the A's. And so we're all Warriors fans, but the football season is upon us, and it's always fun to rally around the bantering that happens. And so it's hard for people to believe I'm a Bay Area fan. We are truly blessed with our families having season ticket holders for the Raiders and the Niners. So when somebody can't make it to the game, we're blessed to be a family that accepts either tickets, right? And so
that's
or
awesome.
that's my seasonal recommendation.
Do you go to Vegas for Raiders games?
We have, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and we have the Levi Stadium. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Brian. And again, this is just one part of a series of conversations that we want to have on our Black student data on campus and the 10 by 10 villages. And we will have our data guru, institutional research personnel on, I think, our next podcast, just to follow the conversations and continue the conversation of addressing the data that indicates where our students need help and how we as staff, as faculty, can help build a stronger community on campus for all our students, but definitely for our Black and African American students.
Yeah, I really appreciate you all thinking of me and inviting me, to be part of this conversation. Always enjoy, spending time and talking with you all. I'm inspired by the work that you're doing, not just with this podcast, but the podcast is dope. I thank you for having me here.
Thank you.